Hello, my name is Ryan Nichols, and today I'll be walking you through my analysis of the case study of Just Baked and their inventory management system, along with lessons that they've learned in their supply chain. So we'll start by applying the news vendor model to cupcake inventory and explore how service levels can differ between upscale and low-end bakeries. We will also look across other industries, and then we'll look at periodic and continuous review policies with examples suited for each approach. And then finally, we'll examine the real world case of Just Baked's decline and then highlight key lessons that Crumble Cookie has learned and that they can apply to avoid similar challenges during its rapid expansion. And then by the end, you'll see how the inventory strategy and the supply chain decisions directly influence the success or the failure of these fast-growing food businesses. All right, so here you can see on this slide, I show the realistic base case news vendor calculation for the daily store level cupcakes. So with the price of $3.50 and the unit cost of $1.50, the underage cost, which is the lost unit profit, is $2. And then the news vendor formula gives a target surface level of about 61.5%, and then that corresponds to a z-score of around 0.29 and an optimal daily stocking quantity of about 86 cupcakes for a store, with the mean daily demand of 80 and then an SD of 20. Now we'll look at the upscale versus the low-end bakeries and why these surface levels differ. So here we compare the two stylized bakery types. So for an upscale shop, we add an estimated future customer value to the underage cost because of missed sale, Hertz brand, and future revenue. So that increases the surface level to roughly about 73%, raising the daily stock to about 92 cupcakes. So for a low-end shop, we must lower the underage cost because customers are less loyal and less likely to pay a minimum or a premium. And then higher relative overage cost pushes the surface level or the service level down. So here it's about 45%. So the optimal daily stock is lower, and then the firm accepts the occasional lost sales to avoid waste. So the key intuition here is the higher CU/CO ratio leads to a higher surface or service level. The businesses with high lifetime value or where stockouts are visible or embarrassing, they will choose higher surface levels. All right, so this is the service level examples. So for 5 other businesses. So as you can see, I did the hospital pharmacy, the grocery, the fresh produce. For a fast chain retailer, I looked at trend items, and then consumer electronics, I looked at a new launch of a new product, and then the industrial spare parts would be the machine equipment that is used. So I computed illustrative service levels for 5 different industries. So you can see that for the hospital pharmacy, it shows critical items often target near around 100% availability. The CU is enormous relative to CO. So for fresh produce, it has a high overage and waste cost, so the optimal surface level can be quite low. When we look at the fast fashion and the trend items, they face heavy high CO, and that lowers the SL. So consumer electronics, with their new launches, as you can see, and the industrial spare parts also push the SL very high. All right, and now we will look at the periodic versus the continuous and then the specific policies for Just Baked. So here are the concrete, periodic, and continuous review calculations applied to Just Baked. So for a non-perishable supplier item like cake mix, a weekly periodic value or review T equals 1 with a 1-week lead time and produces an order up to level S of roughly 54 bags to hit a 95% surface level over the review and lead time interval. And then for eggs, which is the daily ingredient with a multi-day lead time, The continuous review is a better fit. So the mean daily uses has a daily use of about 50 eggs, a 3-day lead time, and then a 98% service target. And the reorder point R is about 186 eggs. So using the EOQ with the assumed ordering and holding cost gives a recommended cycle size when ordering from suppliers. So that's about 3,120 eggs, or about 104 cartons of 30 eggs. So when I did all this, I did have to compute weeks to days, and vice versa, to make sure that it fit correctly on the Excel sheet. And then finally, we will look at media reports and lessons learned from Just Baked and also from Crumble Cookie. So the media reporting shows that Just Baked rapidly expanded after 2009, and by 2015, they closed many of their corporate stores. The coverage pointed to overexpansion, the sale of equity to investors to fund growth, and then franchise and unit economic struggles, and the waning of the cupcake fad. So as cupcakes had their moment in the mid or the late 2010s into the or in the early 2010s, we have seen a decline in that fad over time. So the Eater and the Detroit on closures and the expansion timeline, the Detroit Free Press and other local outlets on investor funding and franchise issues, as you can see stated on this slide. So for Crumble, which scaled extremely quickly in the 2018 to the 2024 window, the takeaways here are: 1, to focus on unit economics per store; 2, to build resilient ingredient supply and secondary suppliers; and then 3, standardize production and quality so a failing location doesn't harm the brand entirely. So if a store is doing bad compared to the other stores, that doesn't drastically affect the entire brand and the entire supply chain. And then 4 would be to manage franchise governance and training, and 5 would be to watch the interplay of marketing-driven rapid openings and back-end supply and capacity. So this is an overview of the Just Baked case study, and then my calculations are attached. So thank you for tuning in.